She'll pay for that one, Malfoy.
Fuck you!
手でおつむがやられちまったか。わしだけか冷静なのは。おい長太郎、冷静になるんじゃ。気をしっかり持て。
Welcome to Wish for Death Island, Population Me. Today we're back in the magic school of stuff that doesn't make sense, and we're gonna keep going on our journey. There are some things to talk about, like what I missed, and I'll include those as we go along. Even from the first one, it's just gonna take some time to bring up these topics as they happen. Now, this is Chamber of Secrets, which is one of the weakest entries, at least I feel, because nothing happens for like half of it and then it goes ham towards the end. Like suddenly it's on crack and everything happens at once. There are some really cool things in it though, and without any further rambling, I'll get into chapter 1. Not for the first time, an argument had broken out over breakfast at number 1 Privet Drive. Again, with the over-explained sentences. Does she draft at all? This is definitely Harry Potter. You could have just cleaned this up to make it more succinct instead, but, you know. So, Harry is back at the Dursleys, and they've been treating him like he's fucking insane and gonna do some magic fucky shit at any moment to murder them. They've doubled down on pretending to be normal as well. They're talking about Dudley's new school, and Dudley is even fatter because he's evil, and Petunia is worried about him not eating enough. Nonsense, Petunia. I never went hungry when I was at Smeltings, said Uncle Vernon heartily. Dudley gets enough, don't you, son? They're making Dudley even more fat. And I suppose the owl would get a lot more pissed off about being locked in a cage all summer, considering it's getting barely any food. Oh yeah, that's a thing, it's somehow not dead. So Harry asks Dudley to say please and says, "What's the magic word?" And then Uncle Vernon gets extremely triggered. "What have I told you," thundered his uncle, spit spraying all over the table, "about saying the M word in our house? So do none of them say those terms anymore? It's just too traumatic for them. How far does this go? Does fanciful count as a magic word? And how does Harry get his homework done at all? Because it's locked in the cupboard under the stairs where he used to sleep. How does he get it out to do it if he needs a book or something? It's funny how Harry has the nerve to say this shit as well. I said this in the last one. He says some really weird sassy shit which just doesn't really make any sense because at some points he has like this self-preservation thing going on where he doesn't want to say something and then he's just like, fuck it. Now it should count as even more of a preservation thing, especially because they're getting more violent at him, and he has like the whole Ministry of Magic school rules type of thing going on that he has to look out for, but he's still at it. Ever since Harry had come home for the summer holidays, Uncle Vernon had been treating him like a bomb that might go off at any moment, because Harry Potter wasn't a normal boy. I thought Uncle Vernon would have been more afraid of Harry. There's the other idea of the Horcrux. Like there was this thing about Harry being a Horcrux, and maybe the reason why Uncle Vernon is treating him so poorly is because a Horcrux makes you go all crazy over time, and the exposure that Uncle Vernon would have to a Horcrux would mean that he would get angrier than he should be. So I would like to know more, at least, because right now it doesn't seem like any of it makes sense. All of Harry's spellbooks, wands, robes, cauldron, and top-of-the-line Nimbus 2000 broomstick had been locked in a cupboard under the stairs by Uncle Vernon the instant Harry had come home. So Harry had gotten everything locked away under the stairs. Doesn't he know an unlocking spell from Hermione? And he's not allowed to do magic outside of school. But the thing is, a lot of examples will come up of people doing magic outside of school, but it's like a loophole, I guess. And I reckon with the way that Dumbledore clearly knows what's going on in Privet Drive, they should have at least sent someone to check on Harry to see if his home life is okay. Like, this is just ignorance on the school system's part, considering what they do in other occasions. They're either 1984, where they just chase you down to give you a letter and you cannot escape from them, or they just don't give a shit. So then he recaps what he learned about him as a baby defeating the evil bald Hitler. Nobody understood why. No one does. None of us do. Vernon was hoping to get a huge order from him. Uncle Vernon's company made drills, unnecessary parentheses. Why not just say it as a normal sentence? Why do you have to add those? This book, I swear she just discovered parentheses as a thing, because there isn't that many in the first one. I don't think there's that many in the third one. In the second one, there's just like 50 million of them everywhere, and I will highlight, I think, almost every one of them I've saved. And every single time, I think I get a little more pissed off. So they run through the Stepford Wives routine of practicing what they're gonna do before the really highly esteemed guests are gonna get there. This is so important because these people are like higher up in Vernon's company. In the lounge, Aunt Petunia said promptly, waiting to welcome them graciously into our home. Underage wizards weren't allowed to use magic outside of school. Well, he's in a pretty dire situation. I wonder if context matters, because if Hogwarts understands so much about the houses that the wizard students live in to the point where they can get the letters to go through the cracks in the house, I just don't really understand how they can't tell context. Like, this is animal abuse that Hedwig is going through, because Hedwig could die. I'm surprised that she's not dead already, being cooped up in that cage. Harry's just having a grand old time, isn't he? Is this the first time a muggle abusive home has had a magical kid in it? What about the other times when the kid needs to be rescued? Did they just let it die even though they could probably have saved it? Because of Harry's magic word bullshit, he gets punished and made to clean all of the stuff in the entire house and garden because child labor is fantastic, and he sees his first signs of Dobby spying on him like a creep. 2 enormous green eyes appeared among the leaves. I wonder how Dobby even operates. How does he exist as a thing? How did he get so far without the Malfoys noticing what he's doing? And if he has such powerful magic as is later confirmed in the books, how did his race even get controlled as a servant to magical people? If he shows this level of sentience, then why are wizards okay with this when they're basically enslaving what is essentially another person? So I wonder if these were actually a race of different people and then they got malformed into becoming house elves over time, or something really fucked up like that. There's a certain group of people in every fan base that tries to make everything political, and there's always these people who go on about how other people are Voldemort and the wizarding world is like the good guys and then the Death Eaters are the bad guys. Insert politics here as like a metaphor, but the wizards that even are considered the good guys still enslave house elves who are sentient, powerful creatures and abuse them horrifically. So I think that that's funny when I see it out in like marches and everything. Even Harry doesn't really see anything wrong with it. Dudley hitched up his trousers, which were sliding down his fat bottom. He's such a fucking caricature. As Harry is cleaning out the garden and dying from the sun, he makes a joke about magic, and Petunia is trying to murder him with a frying pan once she hears that. But he still had to duck as she aimed a heavy blow at his head with the soapy frying pan. Then she gave him work to do, with the promise that he wouldn't eat again until he's finished. Is she actually trying to murder him? If this is a regular occurrence, I think it would show more behaviorally, especially if it happened when he was a toddler. And he knows this happened, so why is he trying to provoke them? Have a sense of self-preservation, child. Harry cleaned the windows, washed the car, and mowed the lawn. After all of this, they give him scraps and make him run upstairs for real this time to hide so that the visitors can actually show up and don't smell the poor in the house. Harry washed his hands and bolted down his pitiful supper. Child starvation, yay! When he gets into the room, he finds Dobby jumping on the bed. He freaks out, naturally, and Dobby introduces himself as Discount Gremlin. "Dobby, sir, just Dobby. Dobby the house elf," said the creature. Can we just talk about house elves? Again, slavery in the wizarding world that everyone is fine with, and they get treated like this. Like they have amazing, powerful magic. And you know, the funny thing is, I make fun of Hermione because of in the 4th book she has this like house elf rights thing, because I think that the way that she does it is entirely annoying and she doesn't explain to people what she's doing. I think it's funny that even after Hermione does this and tries so hard to get people to join the cause to free the house elves, she just stops after a while. Like nothing else happens. She's just like, oh well, whatever. And then just stops. I get some of it is her learning that some house elves like to be in a certain environment where they can clean and all that, but they're being treated well. But there's still so many house elves out there who get abused a lot, and people are fine with it. So I guess she just decides to be fine with it too after all of the spew thing. So let's take the following example of why house elves are fucking weird. Dobby almost revealed some useful information with his message to Harry to not go back to Hogwarts, and stopped himself by hurting himself. Is he compelled to hurt himself magically, or has been emotionally manipulated into doing this at this point because he thinks it's something wrong? He also explains how he's made to serve a family until they let him go. Is he enchanted to serve them? I assume so, but it's difficult to gauge what is him just being emotionally stunted and something that is actually enchanted. Bound to serve one house and one family forever, unless they give you a sock apparently. Which, when Harry gives Dobby the sock, he makes Malfoy give it to Dobby accidentally. I would think that the intent makes something break the curse or whatever it is that keeps Dobby bound to the household, because them giving Dobby a sack to wear is technically them giving him what will become his clothing, and now that he owns this piece of clothing, shouldn't that set him free? And Malfoy wasn't consciously saying, let me give this creature a sock. The sock was hidden in the book, so he wasn't intending to give clothing to Dobby. Why would that set Dobby free? Because otherwise, every single time that he's handed Dobby a piece of clothing to go, hey, wash this for me or something, then he's handing Dobby a piece of clothing. Shouldn't Dobby be able to be set free from that? Shouldn't the pillowcase have set him free? What's the rules behind this? Why does Harry giving Dobby clothing indirectly results in setting him free when Malfoy would have accidentally done it ages ago if that was the case? Harry is nice to Dobby and asks if he can help, and Dobby has another mental breakdown. Harry Potter asks if he can help Dobby. Dobby has heard of your greatness, sir, but of your goodness, Dobby never knew. Harry's Ego, the series. He explains Harry is in danger and can't think of a good way to actually explain why, and I'm wondering if he could just like explain it without explaining it, you know what I mean? Like say, well, it's not this, and then use like opposite day power to explain it to him, but I guess not. Harry Potter must not go back to Hogwarts. So now I'm trying to think of how exactly he knows this, because one of the things about the Malfoys is we don't directly get to see much of them having their secret conversations until maybe the 6th or 7th book, but I always just get this picture in my head of them all standing around talking about exposition as if they're in like a video game where you have to like sneak past someone and they're just saying all their plans out loud so that you can hear them before you go on to the next mission. Like they'll just stand in a circle and Dobby will just be standing there too, and then Malfoy is like, you see, there is something bad that is going to be going on at Hogwarts this year, and then the other Malfoy's like, indeed, I hear it involves Harry Potter, and a big fucking snake, and bald Hitler is gonna come back or some shit, and the other Malfoy's like, yes, I agree, and it will be happening at exactly this date. He knows this because Voldemort is technically being harbored by the Malfoys at this point, but I just wonder exactly how this information actually came across. Like, so Dobby continues to say, a plot to make most terrible things happen at Hogwarts this year. Harry tries to understand this bullshit and coax more out of Dobby, which doesn't lead anywhere. You can't tell me. I understand, but why are you warning me? Why not just use a metaphor, Dobby? Find a way around it. The magic is apparently not so deep into you that you can't explain anything, but it's apparently stopping you from explaining some things, and I don't know where that line is. Maybe you could have explored it a bit more if you were more creative. Before Harry could stop him, Dobby bounced off the bed, seized Harry's desk lamp, and started beating himself about the head with ear-splitting yelps. So then Harry laments that his friends never send him any letters, and maybe they don't like him, and then Dobby lets slip that he knows Harry hasn't been getting any letters, which is mighty suspicious. Harry Potter mustn't be angry with Dobby. Dobby did it for the best. And then Harry's like, have you been stopping my letters? You fucking what? Why did Dobby think that this plan would work? Why not somehow warn those friends, like go over to Ron and Hermione and be like, yo, Harry can't show up because he'll fucking die or some shit. And then they'll tell Harry in their letters and it will mean more to him because it's coming from them, and then Dobby can kind of communicate with all of them. How the fuck Dobby even managed this either? Like he seems to just have gone flying through the air and intercepted the owls and just took the letters from the owls or something. And then what did the owls do then if somebody took the package from them before they delivered it? Did they just fly home and not give a shit? And if you can intercept owls that frequently, then I guess the Malfoys really don't care how much time you spend out of the house, because that must have taken a while. Dobby makes Harry promise not to go to school, and in exchange for this is getting his letters back. However, Harry doesn't understand a concept of lying, so he keeps saying that he can't promise this, and Dobby just keeps getting more angry, and then Harry is like, oh my god, give me my letters back, and it's like, dude, just lie. No, said Harry angrily, give me my friend's letters. Just lie, dude. Like, just, I don't know, what the fuck? What is Dobby gonna do? You don't know anything about Dobby. Just lie to Dobby and make Dobby go away. So Harry chases Dobby out into the hall. Dobby is about to fuck up the visitors as well, and all Harry has to do is lie, but he doesn't do it. No, croaked Harry. Please, they'll kill me. Also, hang on, if Dobby has all of this power, why didn't Dobby just write a letter, like a fake letter saying that Harry had been expelled from Hogwarts? Harry knows so little about Hogwarts and the Wizarding World as it is, because it's only been his first year around magic, that he wouldn't fucking know. You could just make one of the owls bring him that letter instead with a Hogwarts seal on it or something. I'm sure that you could make one or like snatch one of the letters from the Malfoy's house and use the seal again. Harry probably would be too dumb to figure it out considering how he's acting here. Maybe the school wouldn't actually give a shit if Harry just didn't show up one year. I mean, I don't know what their track record is because they're so inconsistent, but one could hope. So Dobby again is like, promise me that you won't go to Hogwarts, and then Harry's like, I can't. Harry, unless you're literal Jesus, I think that you can tell a lie or two. But alas, he doesn't. So the cake smashes on the visitors and Harry looks like the culprit as Dobby fucks off with the letters. Just our nephew, very disturbed. Meeting strangers upset him, so we kept him upstairs. Begone, parentheses. So Harry gets a letter instantly as the visitors are being rushed out of the house, and Vernon can tell that there's something off about it apparently, so he demands that Harry reads it. Read it, he hissed evilly, brandishing the letter the owl had delivered. Go on, read it. How did the owl get there so fast without any means of teleportation? And if they know so easily what's happening when a magic rule is being broken, then how do they not know who or what being is using the spell? How do they not know the difference between house elf magic and human magic? Surely that they can tell the difference because they seem to know everything else. Why does their knowledge just stop here to the point where they think that Harry is the one who's doing something? Like, if another wizard showed up in Harry's house, would they think that Harry was the one who was doing the magic instead because they just mark it with your address? That's just so stupid. How do they know? How do they know enough to have like what is essentially a do not reply auto email sent to their house, but not know the specifics? Improper use of magic office, Ministry of Magic. How does the ministry department dedicated to this not know the difference between human magic and elf magic? Vernon sees this and once again gets this idea of wanting Harry to not exist, but at the same time wanting to possess Harry and keep him away from school for some reason, and says, "You're never going back to that school. Never. And if you try and magic yourself out, they'll expel you. You tried keeping the school away from him last time, and you almost fucking died. How do you think this is gonna work again?" So they lock Harry in his room all the time and only let him out during bathroom breaks, and they put all of his meals through this cat flap on his door. All of his meals are essentially this gross like tomato soup in a can things. They also install bars on his windows because evil people thing. They let Harry out to use the bathroom morning and evening, otherwise he was locked in his room around the clock. Hedwig is also in the cage all summer as well. Vernon padlocked it, and you reckon Harry would have learned how to pick locks if he was growing up so rough? Like, you reckon he would have needed it for something? "It's no good turning your beak up at it, it's all we've got," Harry said grimly. Adverbs, rolling adverbs. Also, Harry is having a little crisis because of the child abuse. He clearly thinks that he might die here. Supposing he was still alive in another 4 weeks, what would happen if he didn't turn up at Hogwarts? Would they be able to make the Dursleys let him go? Yes. Yes, they did that last time. Do you have short-term memory loss? Then the Weasleys turn up, loud as fuck, flying the car, loud as fuck. No one in the neighborhood notices, it's loud as fuck. Ron, how did you, what the? Yeah, I'd like to know too. How did they make it all the way without the ministry finding out? Didn't they give like an auto email response owl flying after them like, "You are doing magic in the sky"? So they say that there's a loophole. They have magic making the car fly, but since they're not casting the spell, they're just using the magical car, this doesn't count. This is a legal technicality that I can maybe understand, but I'm still not really gonna give it any credit since they have the foresight to have technicalities, but not enough to actually tell the difference between elf and human magic. Because as Ron describes it, "Oh, this doesn't count," said Ron. "We're only borrowing this. It's Dad's. We didn't enchant it. But doing magic in front of muggles you live with." Yeah, okay. So if a underage wizard casts a spell in a forest, does he actually cast a spell since no one can see him? If the Dursleys wake up, I'm dead. How the fuck are they not waking up from this? Like, if my neighbor starts revving his engine or something, or beeping even, I'll wake up. Ron and friends start yanking the bars off of the window using the car, which is gonna create even more noise. It's like hearing construction noises next door. I'll wake up as soon as I hear that shit. Harry keeps listening for people waking up but doesn't hear anything. There was no sound from the Dursleys' bedroom. Are they dead? So after they don't wake up at all, the bird goes doot doot and suddenly they do wake up. So construction noises, you can sleep through them, even if they're happening inside your house, but an owl making a soft noise is as loud as a foghorn in this universe. So they see Harry hopping into the car and they run and grab his ankle. "Petunia," roared Uncle Vernon, "he's getting away! He's getting away!" Just let him go. You want to get rid of him, right? Just like be like, "Yo, Weasleys, can you adopt this bitch?" I'm sure you would have loved that. Do the Matilda thing. "See you next summer," Harry yelled. "Unless they don't want you back, what you gonna do then?" It's like they get reset as NPCs every single year. Like, every single year at the beginning, something bad happens, and then the Weasleys are like, "Oh my god, I'm gonna fucking kill you." And then Harry's like, "Haha, you fucking idiot." And then at the very end of it, they're just like, "I remember nothing from the beginning of the year." And then it just resets again. So Harry talks about his encounter with Dobby, and Fred and George look very dubious about this. "What, do you think he was lying to me?" said Harry. "Why don't you think he was lying to you? You don't even know who he is. You have no proof that he's telling the truth. You've never met a house elf before." So Fred explains house elves. They have very powerful magic of their own and could have been sent by the owners to fuck with Harry. And of course, all of the Weasleys are totally fine with this very immoral type of thing. "Yes, Mom's always wishing we had a house elf to do the ironing," says George. "Yeah, slavery's okay." They go on to talk more about their owl and some of the dynamics of their wizarding home. "Our owl, he's ancient. It wouldn't be the first time he's collapsed on delivery." "Oh geez, owls are as bad as the real life postal service." "Can you not send things through flu powder? Wouldn't flu powder be a much better way to do things?" "Also, their dad works at the ministry." "He works in the most boring department," said Ron, "the misuse of Muggle artifacts office." So then the car touches down and they get out. Now the thing is, when the car starts crashing, it actually does wake up Mrs. Weasley. So I can understand that actually makes sense, but apparently the Dursleys just have so much wax in their ears that they don't hear it. Fat brown chickens are pecking their way around the yard. A really cool house, actually. It's kind of implied that there's some sort of magic holding it together, and while I do have questions about that, I do think that it's very cute. It's one of the most aesthetic things about Harry Potter. I do really love the design of the house, even in the movies. The whole thing looks really cool. Molly Weasley roasts them all for getting the car and going off, and then she says some nice stuff to Harry and introduces herself. Does she know about Harry's home life? I think she does. I don't really get this. There's just so much where I'm like, I kind of understand what you're going for, but you're clearly just not writing enough detail, so I am very confused. So they have this clock that tracks where the family is and what they're doing, and it moves as they go from one place to another. The writing around the edges are things like time to make tea, time to feed the chickens, and you're late. If they can track where they are, then how does that work exactly? And how do they know where they're going if it's not marked? Is this like a GPS thing? Arthur and I have been worried about you too. What were they gonna do? Is there a wizard CPS involved? So they have to go out into the garden and do some de-gnoming, getting rid of gnomes and sending them packing. So in the wizarding world, gnomes are some common garden pest. They don't seem to have as much sentience, but they seem to be kind of like birds who can mimic certain sentences. I also would like Rowling to stop using those parentheses. I spot another one. Of course, Harry is good at throwing gnomes because sports ball. Harry is just sports ball Jesus. Arthur comes home and talks about his job and the raids. The raids are something that they do on dark magic people and the remnants of Voldemort's Nazi team or whatever to get some contraband items. Old Mundungus Fletcher tried to put a hex on me when my back was turned. Did you fucking arrest him? So they go into Ron's room and he has some Quidditch shit around with moving posters on the walls. "The Chudley cannons," said Ron, pointing at the orange bedspread, which was emblazoned with 2 black C's and a speeding cannonball. The Dursleys liked everything neat and ordered. The Weasleys' house burst with the strange and unexpected. Please, show don't tell. There's a bunch of weird crap in their house, like a mirror that talks to you about your appearance. Is this sentient? It's a talking mirror. Rowling, please. Please. So they get their school lists for the year of what to get, and Harry gets his too because Dumbledore is fucking omniscient. Is Dumbledore actually fucking God? Is he just God? The new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher is also introduced, and he is very dubious. I love how they just let this teacher scam his way into the school. Like, I'm sure that Dumble knows that this man is a scammer because he knows everything else, but I guess Dumbledore could see into the future and knew that Harry was gonna have to take him into the Chamber of Secrets for some fucking reason. So everybody hangs out and They take their brooms and fly over the villages and stuff. So they can fly outside of Hogwarts but not actually use magic. So then it comes time for them to use their flue powder to go to Diagon Alley, and they need to teach Harry how to use it. He took a pinch of glittering powder out of the flower pot, stepped up to the fire and threw the powder into the flames. So what the fuck is up with flue powder? Why can't you use it to go to Hogwarts instead of the train? Why not use it to send packages instead of sending owls? How long does it actually take you to go places? Harry wonders why he's supposed to do certain things to operate with the flue powder, and they go on to explain several more confusing things. Well, there's an awful lot of wizard fires to choose from, you know, but as long as you've spoken clearly, why do you need to speak your destination if you could fall out of the wrong one? Like, what level of concentration do you need to teleport? What does it look like when you do? Are you flying around different places, or are you just suddenly there? Like, so Harry fucks up the name. It seems like he did pronounce where he was going fairly clearly, but he just stuttered a bit, and I guess that wasn't enough because he ends up spit out into some dingy ghetto. So it's all evil where he ends up, and he looks around and immediately hides so the child molesters can't find him. Malfoy and Draco and some weird little fuck walk in. The Wizarding World has an entire section for black markets, and they could get raided regularly since they're just right next to the Diagon Alley with a signpost that says that you're in Nocturne Alley, and you're telling me that they can get away with so much illegal shit when they're right there? Like, I always kind of thought, isn't Nocturne Alley kind of a honeypot? Surely it must be a honeypot. Surely it just isn't like illegal shit out in the open because the government's incompetent. Then again, that shit exists in real life, so I can buy that, but something tells me Rowling didn't mean it that way. Draco cannot shut up about Harry. Like, dude, get a hobby. Please, get a hobby. Does Draco just constantly talk about him? Also, this boot kisser that's with them mentions that Malfoy has a big place in the Ministry, so he's surprised that Malfoy gets raided. Wizard blood is counting for less everywhere. This entire alley is just Nazi bootlegs, I guess. So Harry managed to leave and ends up outside and looks at all the shops and the child molesters who are probably going to try and steal his kidneys and sell them on the black market. The one that he'd left, Borgin and Burke's, looked like the largest, but opposite was a nasty window display of shrunken heads. Shrunken heads, are those cursed contraband? What about like African magic or voodoo and stuff? Like the magic morality system differing by culture? You know what I mean? Like what if it's okay to have house elves in this world, but if you go to like the east or somewhere else, they're like, ew, what the fuck? We don't do that to house elves. And then they have like a different type of magic. Like it must be contraband to use blood in a wizard spell in the UK, let's say. But then if you go somewhere else to like Scandinavia or something, some badass Viking motherfuckers are gonna like slit their palms open and start making some magic. And then that's perfectly fine because culturally it's different. People slitting their palms is retarded because barely any blood comes out and it'll just hurt a bit of your arm or something. It's stupid. Anyway, I'm getting distracted again. Harry, what do you think you're doing down there? Hagrid shows up just in time. What's he doing down there? And I wonder how Harry would have gotten out on his own. So they head straight back to where the Weasleys are in Diagon Alley, and Hermione's there. Nocturne Alley, if you hadn't found him, Hagrid— oh lord, the parentheses. Listen, I've gotten a few of you requesting if I could check over your own writing and do some feedback for you. I'm happy to do that, but let me tell you, if I catch you using parentheses unnecessarily, I'm gonna show up at your house at 3 in the morning and I'm gonna fucking beat your ass with a rolled up newspaper. Do you want that? No? Don't use unnecessary parentheses. Don't use the word obvious unnecessarily, because otherwise you're gonna summon me at 3 AM. Now, we've gotten that out of the way, let's continue. Harry feels bad about having all of this money and being a rich kid. When he goes into the bank, it doesn't help either. Harry felt even worse when they reached his vault. He tried to block the contents from view as he hastily shoved handfuls of coins into a leather bag. Percy, one of the Weasleys' oldest brothers, says that he wants to be Minister for Magic. He kind of reminds me a bit of Dio, but without the sense of humor or the flamboyancy or anything cool. So they walk into Flourish and Blotts to get some stationery supplies and see the grand Lockhart himself. He's very obviously a scammer, but no one seems to care. So Lockhart spots Harry amongst the crowd and makes it about himself, naturally, while Harry gets embarrassed. When young Harry here stepped into Flourish and Blotts today, he only wanted to buy my autobiography, which I will be happy to present him now, free of charge. The Malfoys show up and Arthur doesn't like them and he mentions that they're just corrupt. Rotten to the core, the whole family. Everyone knows that. I suppose we never know more about the wizard elites. We must investigate Malfoy Island. Ginny also has a bag that has been enchanted to have more space on the inside, and don't even get me started on pocket dimensions and however the fuck that happens. I'm already stuck on the paintings on the wall. Like, how is there a painting dimension? How do bags have more space on the inside? Like, what is the equivalent exchange of space going on here? So we get out of that shit and we go to the station. Harry and Ron are the only ones left on the platform to go to the train area. It doesn't work because the platform is closed. Crash! Both trolleys hit the barrier and bounced backwards. Ron's trunk fell off with a loud thunk. So it was confirmed afterwards that Dobby closed the station, and since it's run by the school, the immense power that Dobby must have to close even a Hogwarts-run thing is insane. So they go to the car park and Ron says it doesn't matter if the parents get left behind because they can teleport anyway. Apparition, it's called. Again, is this not something where they can just find an easier solution? Like, why don't you just apparate to your friend's house and just be like, hey, take this letter, okay, bye, and then you fuck off after you hang out with them? Ron unlocks the cavernous trunk with a series of taps of his wand. So does this not count as doing magic? Because you are doing magic to open the trunk. What about the kids who practice magic while they're at home? Like, doing magic around muggles in your home is apparently bad, maybe, and if you have a wizard family, it's okay? Or, like, what if the muggles, like Hermione's parents, know that she's magic? So if she practices a spell in front of them in her own room when no one else can see, how is that breaking any law here? Like, how do they know? So Ron taps something else and the entire car goes invisible, including Harry and Ron, so Harry can't even see anything. Let's go, said Ron's voice from his right. Also, if that's the way that works, then how does the cloak work? Because the invisibility cloak, you seem to be able to see yourself while you're inside it, but the car, it's like everything is invisible. So then the car starts failing because it's just old and it can't make it the entire way. Come on, said Ron cajolingly, giving the steering wheel a little shake. Nearly there, come on. The school is enchanted so it wouldn't let randoms in, or UFOs essentially, so they would have been stopped, or at least have like an alert system once they cross the barrier into Hogwarts, but apparently that doesn't happen, and which I find even more odd because you're essentially unknown magical object. You couldn't have been like a bad guy coming into the school. So they crash and the car becomes a sentient dog and runs away into the forest after vomiting them out, which I have several questions, but I actually find it really cool. The trunk was bent almost double. Its gnarled bows were pummeling every inch of the car it could reach. So they're inside a killer tree. There's a killer tree in the school, and these idiots could have died, but they just escaped just in time. Come back, yelled Ron, brandishing his broken wand after it. Dad'll kill me! Also, don't worry, Ron. Everything else in this school will kill you first. So let's take a break and go to the movie like we did last time.
Tell me, what exactly is the function of a rubber duck?
The movie does that cloud thing again, and then we start out with Harry in his room. Hedwig is throwing a tantrum, so Harry goes downstairs and chews everyone out, and says that he never gets messages from his friends. Vernon gives some exposition about the living arrangements, and they go through their Stepford Wives routine. Harry is sent up to his room and finds Dobby jumping on the bed. Dobby looks interesting in terms of early 2000s movie effects. Okay, Dobby is creepy. I also find it weird that Harry is allowed to display any magical objects in his room. Like, he has made it clear that Uncle Vernon has a North Korea-style control over magical contraband, yet he has all of this stuff in his room. Why not just put the books in there too? So the visitors hear some weird noises upstairs, and Uncle Vernon blames it on a cat. Dobby then has a fucking freak out, and I don't know how they hear Dobby screaming when they don't hear the car later. Why does Dobby have these letters with him in the first place? Like, does he have them for no other reason besides like a bargaining chip or something? Yet he clearly made it sound like he didn't want to tell Harry that his friends weren't messaging him or anything. So it's like, why not just not bring the letters with you? Why not just burn them or dump them somewhere? Then they go down the stairs and the cake thing happens because Dobby is stupid. I don't know why Harry is moving around as if he's casting the cake to move, because everyone gets upset, and if he was upstairs then they could have been a little bit less of an upset, like, oh, you did it somehow, but I don't know how. But now it's just like, no, it looks like you did it. And even then, why don't you just run up, get the cake, and then go back before they can see you? Just run instead of like following it around like that. Harry is allowed his magical books too in his room, and immediately the next night the Weasleys show up, so it seems like they automatically knew Harry was in danger instead of a more spaced out way in the book. The car is also way louder, and it starts pulling the bars, and the Dursleys wake up, which makes more sense than it does in the book. So they crash into the lawn, and I don't know what the dishes are washing themselves for. Is this like an enchantment? The weird clock on the wall is also quite cute, honestly. Ron speaks loudly like an idiot after all of that, so the mum comes down the stairs to get angry at them.
Not much. But it's home.
Ginny pops her head in and freaks the fuck out because she's a simp and leaves.
Harry Potter.
Good lord. Are you really?
Nah, I just like to pretend to at parties. An owl flies into the window, and Dumbledore automatically knows where Harry is because he is God. They immediately go to Diagon Alley. Harry fucks it up in a completely brain-dead fashion in the movie. Just have him cough.
Diagonally.
Why did you make him say it like that? There's no scene of Draco or the bad artifacts as well. Where did all these weirdos come out of nowhere? Lucius insults them and they just go to the station. This pacing is on crack again. Then they all get fucked up at the station. Then they're in the car and the invisibility thing happens. It only affects the outside of the car, which makes way more sense than how it was described in the book. And thankfully, when the train thing happens, they don't end up driving straight like it's a Prometheus thing. They actually try to go off the tracks. Did I mention how much I don't like Prometheus? They don't spam the soundtrack as much in this movie. They're already at school as well, just after a little bit.
A house elf shows up in my bedroom. We can't get through the barrier to platform 9 3/4.
Just expositions up the stairs as they make their way into the castle. Filch catches them and then Snape gets angry. Dumbledore shows up too. They cut to the next day and Mandrake's thing. I really like magical botany as well. When Ron fixes his wand, Colin shows up. This is the stalker. This is a grade A stalker. Run from him. Ron then gets a howler from his mom. A howler is basically an envelope with Xbox Live banter inside of it. So when you open it, you get just like bass boosted to death. And it's quite embarrassing, honestly. Because Ron gets it, he opens it, everyone in school knows what the business is with him. It seems like a very unproductive thing to do because everyone in school is going to know what you're up to. If you don't open it after a certain period of time, it'll explode or something. So I wonder why they couldn't just be like, you've received a howler, please go to the owlery to get bass boosted to death. Instead of just bringing it to the fucking school. So then they go to Defense Against the Dark Arts. He has some pixies to release to do some practical work, and they look like some JRPG shit. Again, the effects in this movie are interesting, watching them now. For Quidditch, they want to be harder, better, faster, stronger, and the Slytherins cock-block them, because essentially what happened is Snape decided, hey, I know that the Gryffindors are using the field right now, but let me override that because I'm biased and a shit teacher so that the Slytherins can chase them off the field. I don't know how that shit flies at school. I guess no one gives a shit. None of the teachers do. They're too busy smoking or something. But that's a thing that happens. And Draco shows up and starts shit-talking them, which makes Ron want to punch him in the face, but instead he tries a lame spell that backfires on himself. When they're at Hagrid's and Ron is vomiting up slugs, they just kind of leave him do that in the background while Hermione explains what the term mudblood means and Hagrid explains what racism is to Harry. Then they're in detention afterwards because of the whole car stabbing a tree thing, and Harry hears some voices. He also hears it on the way back too and ends up bumping into Ron and Hermione, who are just hanging out, and no one that he tells about the noises seems to hear them. So after assessing said yeeted cat, Snape once again gets triggered. They all go upstairs and talk about the voices so that everyone can hear them talking about Harry's supposed schizophrenia. They tell him not to tell anyone and the portraits just agree.
She's right, you know.
Because everyone can hear this conversation. Wouldn't one of the portraits tattle? Wouldn't one of the portraits be like, yo, one of your students is having a Joker moment. You should probably talk to him before he shoots up a school. Is there such a thing as a private conversation in this entire castle? So they turn animals into cups during Transfiguration, and I have several questions about that, but I don't know if I should bother asking them. Hermione talks about the Chamber of Secrets because she read about it and some of the school legends are talking about it since the cat thing happened, and apparently Salazar Slytherin is a big bad. When he and the 3 other people created the school, they had a big argument because Salazar had this thing about muggles not being allowed into the school and they were all arguing about that, so Salazar just went ahead and built this big ass chamber somewhere, and apparently none of the other ones could figure it out. I guess he was just secretly getting all these contractors in to build this shit and none of them told anyone else, or he just murdered them all somehow. I guess magic has no rules in this universe, so he could have just waved his wand and a bunch of bricks could have assembled themselves and then he just walked out of the school. I don't know what's up to that, but it's a thing that exists in the school. Magic architecture. So they also talk about Malfoy being a weirdo, because of course you would suspect Malfoy. Malfoy has some issues. Brings up Polyjuice Potion as an idea to disguise themselves as the Slytherins to talk to Malfoy about what's happening. And they go to the library, and this dangerous book with dangerous information is just out in the middle of the fucking thing, so everyone can go and get it whenever they want to. 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds, probably even infants can then learn how to turn people's guts inside out and commit horrible acts against humanity whenever they feel like it. At least in the book it was in the restricted section. This one they just like hand it out. So Quidditch happens and Harry just gets fucking obliterated. His arm gets obliterated. It's bad. And let's not let this pass. There is a spell to remove all of the bones in your arm. I guess all of your veins and other things don't shift around and cause excruciating pain. You just kind of flop your arm around like that. And then after that, there is apparently a thing that exists in the wizarding world where you can drink it like you're taking Lemsip and just grow your bones back overnight. So if someone is disabled, like they can't walk and they're in a wheelchair, do you just take their bones out of their body, make them drink Skelligro, and then just leave it overnight and they're no longer disabled? Do disabled people exist in this world? There is a series of questions that you should ask yourself when you're doing some fantasy stuff. For example, one of my personal pet peeves is when you go up to a bunch of NPCs or your other characters and they all instantly know the exact same information about the universe and all of the dates off by heart, like, hey, you've been isekai'd into magical world, let me tell you about all of this shit like I'm a history textbook. Because if you talk about human history in real life, there'll be people who have different political opinions, there'll be people who just didn't pay attention in school and have no idea what you're talking about. There'll be people who don't know the layout of the area that they live in because they barely leave the house. There's so many different types of people. You have to ask a bunch of people for information if you're trying to get a full story. Even then, you probably have to consult a book or look it up online to really get the information. If you ask people the date of World War II, they'll be able to tell you, but if you ask them a bunch of little details, they probably wouldn't know the names of a lot of little events that aren't just the main thing, unless they're some sort of history buff, and even then, you don't guarantee that the first person you meet is going to be a history buff, and if you do have that history buff character, you should definitely contrast them with the other people who don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Another example is morality. For example, does morality differ in the cultures of your world? Why wouldn't it? Why would it be uniform across the board? Wouldn't there be people who just wouldn't agree with that? In Harry Potter itself, you do have the Death Eaters and the other people, and it just seems like a very black and white thing of the good and the bad guys, but you have a bunch of different other cultures, like the Eastern cultures, the African cultures, all of the fucking different types of Europe even, but it doesn't seem to have that much of a difference. Everything is just very plain, besides good and bad. And then you have like horrifying spells like whatever's in the potion books about people being tortured and whatnot, like they mention in the same book that the Polyjuice Potion is in. So if that's the case, then what's some of the culture around that? What about the history of wizards? Was it okay to do this to other people and then they decided humans have rights, so let's not do that, but they have those spells as a kind of reminder of the dark magic that exists? Do some other cultures still use that? And that's a problem, but what are they going to do about it? How does the ministry interact with other ministries in other countries? How do disabled people both mentally and physically work in your world? If they don't work in your world, why is that? Is it like an apocalypse situation? Do they just not exist? Do they all die off somehow? All of these questions. The world's complicated, so you gotta put some effort in. Anyway, so Dobby shows up and argues and is generally pretty useless, and then he just leaves. Colin shows up, is dead. Well, he's not dead, but, you know, basically dead. Then the teachers get scared of the Chamber of Secrets, and they're suddenly in the bathroom. Everybody just goes to the bathroom and starts talking about stuff. Moaning Myrtle shows up and has a bit of a moment, and she's apparently just been quiet the entire time until she waits for her name to be mentioned and then just appears. So Lockhart starts a dueling club to show off. Harry gets all snaky. There's some like 3D bait with the snake, because remember, this movie came out in 3D and they really want you to know that. Apparently when I was 1 to 2 years old or something, my parents had taken me to the movies to watch this, and I was fine throughout the entire movie, like the snake lunging at the screen, everything. But as soon as the basilisk appeared, I started crying because baby me don't like that snake. The other snake is totally fine, that one's cool, but the basilisk was too scary for me. After this, everyone gets the impression that Harry is a horrifying murderer and hates people and uses the snakes to murder people, and he gets some weird looks in study hall and decides to leave. He hears voices again to find Nicholas dead. How do you kill a ghost? McGonagall sends him to Dumbledore, and there's some like weird hand movements going on. What the fuck you doing? The Sorting Hat decides to have a conversation with Harry about the fact that Harry chose the house that he's in, but apparently no one else knows how to do that. And then Hagrid shows up afterwards because Hagrid tries to clear Harry's name, and then Dumbledore's like, no, I know you didn't do it. I just wonder how anyone else can think that a child is capable of doing the horrible shit that the basilisk can do, but we're in Hogwarts. I'm not gonna question it anymore. So Christmas happens. They've got everything set for the Polyjuice potion, and Hermione brings up the cupcakes that she prepared so that they can get the hairs from Crabbe and Goyle. So what happens is they make the cupcakes levitate, there's some sleeping potion in there, the two idiots don't question why there's floating food. They get locked up somewhere in a broom closet or something, and the hairs get brought and put into the potion. One thing that I don't get is when their physical body transforms, I get the idea that the organs and whatnot will transform as well, and if your voice box transforms, your voice will change. However, in the movies, they decided to keep Harry's voice instead, which doesn't make any sense, which I can only assume is because they might have thought the audience would have been confused if they couldn't hear Harry's voice, because Malfoy doesn't seem to question why Crabbe suddenly sounds like Harry
Potter?
even though their voices are two completely different voices. So I'm a bit confused on that one. Anyway, Malfoy doesn't seem to question anything. He confirms that he wasn't behind the weird things, and they just leave. Once they find out Hermione's a cat, she gets taken to the hospital, and they find the diary in the flooded bathroom. Harry immediately decides to give this magical object his name. The diary invites him to join him in a flashback where Dumbledore finds him, sees a dead chick, and then Tom Riddle finds Hagrid and makes it look like Hagrid is the one behind everything. So Harry, even though he knows Hagrid and he doesn't know Tom Riddle, decides to trust Tom Riddle over Hagrid and talks about Hagrid with his friends. And then Hagrid shows up and looks suspicious. And then they go up and find Harry's bed is trashed because someone stole the diary. There's more Quidditch, and it got cancelled because Hermione got attacked or something. I don't really care. Hagrid is extra on guard and almost murders them because he's very upset. Dumbledore shows up with the minister and speaks aloud about the bullshit because he knows that Harry is there. Of course he does.
If anybody was looking for some stuff, then all they'd have to do would be to follow the spiders. Yep.
I wonder why Lucius doesn't immediately look at him like, what the fuck are you saying, dude? So after they barely escape, the car decides to go back into the woods because that was the whole thing. They go back to check on Hermione and find the paper in her hand. They discover that the basilisk is going through the pipes, and McGonagall talks about how Ginny was taken into the chamber. So they run up to Lockhart and find him packing. Lockhart confesses that he is bullshit, and they find the bathroom with him. They all go down and Harry leads them into the pipes because apparently Harry seems to have an internal compass. I guess Harry's got to do everything. Harry's the fucking chosen one. They have some 90s music video flashbacks, and Tom decides to walk around in circles while giving evil exposition. This thing that he does with his name is so fucking lame. So Harry decides that Dumbledore needs some more praise, and Tom gets very angry about that. And then Tom just awkwardly watches while Harry pulls out the sword and then kills the snake. He's just like, oh well, fuck then. I guess I'm gonna go play a video game. And Ginny just wakes up. She was just chilling before, but now she's like, what the fuck? Then they talk to Dumbledore afterwards, and Dumbledore says that because Harry buffs up his ego, Harry's cool. Afterwards, Lucius shows up and has some Captain Kirk-ass lighting going on. Dobby gets set free, and I'm not even gonna question that because I'm too tired. I don't have the energy anymore. Afterwards, they go to the feast, and Hagrid gets a round of applause just for existing because he should. And that's the movie. So let's get back into the book, and rolling, I swear to God. So they run into Snape and he gets them in trouble. "You've been seen," he hissed, showing them the headline, "Flying Fort Angela mystifies Muggles." Snape doesn't even listen to what they're saying with their explanations. He's just shitty and his favoritism is showing. If they had actually been clear with how they know what magic is done when, I don't think this would have been a problem. 6 or 7 muggles in all. I believe your father works in the misuse of muggle artifacts office. So what are they going to do, chase down the muggles and erase their memories or something? So Dumbledore himself shows up. There was a long silence, then Dumbledore said, "Please explain why you did this." I'm surprised he doesn't already know. He seems to know everything unless it's convenient for him not to know. Then again, I wonder about his character because he seems totally fine with a child going off to defeat Voldemort. Harry lies about some things and then wonders if Dumbledore is going to call him out on it, but Dumbledore doesn't seem to. So they get away with it and have a few detentions and that's about it. They also eat some food from a plate that seems to keep refilling itself. Parentheses rolling. So they go to the Great Hall and the kids are going on about how cool the tree abuse that occurred was. "Brilliant," yelled Lee Jordan. "Inspired, what an entrance. Flying a car right into the Whomping Willow. People will be talking about this one for years." It's kind of weird how in the first one, Harry getting points deducted because of the whole dragon escapade made everyone in school hate him, but when they fly a car into the school and get in trouble, everyone thinks that that's cool. Like, oh yeah, you probably lost health points and shit, but no, that's pretty cool. Stabbing a tree is great. So they go to their dorms and the space is just as confusing. At last they reach their door of their old dormitory, which now had a sign saying second year. So where did the other years sleep? Today it was a dull, cloudy grey. So they have breakfast, Ron gets his howler and gets wrecked in front of the entire school. Pretty embarrassing, I'd say. Harry spotted the Whomping Willow off in the distance, several of its branches now in slings. The murder tree is the real victim here. They run into Lockhart too, he's being just as annoying. Just been showing Professor Sprout the right way to doctor a Whomping Willow. I guess the teachers are too scared to call him out or something. So then they deal with the mandrakes. I hope they have life insurance. I wonder how many kids have died at this school actually. And they also get introduced to this muggle-born boy named Justin who will come back in the story in a bit. Hermione beamed as she had her hand shaken too. I swear to fucking god. So the muggle-born dude in their class goes on about how he was destined to go to another school entirely, but his mom found out that Dumbledore is running the school, so decided to send him here instead. So is this a muggle school that everyone knows about, or does the UK have more than one magic school? Because it seems like if you're from like across the country, do you go to that school? Like, does each sector of the world have their own school? How many schools are there? What if a wizard decides they want to make a homeschooling situation? Is that illegal? So everyone is struggling with their classwork, but Ron is struggling the most because his fucking wand is broken. Ron was having far worse problems. He had patched up his wand with borrowed spello tape. A wand is an essential thing. It's kind of like a student at school not having any pens or pencils or anything. Like, what do you do about that? Can you get him an extra wand? Can you maybe be like, oh, you gotta repair it or something? Like, they can't just leave him with that. Like, why is he even at school? He can't even do anything now. So, creepy weirdo kid Colin Krave introduces himself. This child is a stalker. I guess the other first years are just normalized to Harry's existence and Colin just didn't get the memo. His eyes raked Harry's hairline. Oh my god, I'm gonna appear at Rowling's house at 3 AM. He also loves cameras, and if I develop the pictures in the right potion, the pictures will move. So they don't immediately move once the pictures are taken. It's something that develops in potion. So does the picture itself retain the movement within it and then it gets unlocked through the potion or what? Can you develop them as stills in the wizarding world? And if so, how do wizards not understand that some pictures don't move? Because Ron was reacting to it in the first one like, why wouldn't they move? Like he didn't know that pictures would be able to be still. So they go to Lockhart's class. Everyone seems to hate the guy, honestly, except Hermione and some of the other girls, because teenage girls. Plus in the third book, Snape fills in for when Lupin is going through his werewolf shit, so Snape is clearly qualified to be teaching Defense Against the Dark Arts. If it was so hard to get a teacher for Defense Against the Dark Arts, why didn't they just make Snape do it for this year and then get another teacher to do potion? Because otherwise the other situation that they have now is that a con man is doing it, someone who Dumbledore obviously knows is a con man. So it would have been a much better decision on his part as a person who understands and takes care of his students to just have a qualified person in charge. I don't really understand why Lockhart had to be involved unless Dumbledore was like, oh no, people like him so it'll look good for us, like he doesn't care about his students. So he shows them a bunch of shit and some pixies for their first lesson. It's really kind of irrelevant, and I don't know how he caught them or where, and then he just lets them go and chaos happens. Hermione defends him because Hermione is surprisingly kind of stupid in this this part. Like, she's usually the smart one. Surely she could be smart enough to know that he's a fraud. Ron also hits Flitwick between the eyes in the other class by accident. He really needs to get that one fixed. There's a picture Colin gives Harry and it shows him being uncomfortable with Lockhart because Colin just knows exactly when to take pictures. A moving black and white Lockhart was tugging hard on an arm Harry recognized as his own. He was pleased to see that his photographic self was putting up a good fight, refusing to get dragged into view. As Harry watched, Lockhart gave up and slumped against the white edge of the picture. So is this, again, just like a thing that they're displaying, or is there like a Black Mirror White Christmas kind of thing going on where there's another version of them inside whatever you use to capture it in? Oliver Wood at Quidditch training says that they should have won the cup last year, but without Harry they lost the game. So Harry is the team. Without him the team is nothing. How boring is that? There's no sense of tension in the sport because everyone knows Harry's just gonna win anyway. I'm surprised it hasn't lost its passion for Harry because he just wins anyway. Like, there was a Twilight Zone episode about this where if you win so much the game loses its magic for you. So like, I think it was about basketball maybe? Or was it about boxing? I can't remember. You know the episode I'm talking about. So Draco insults Hermione and Ron tries casting a spell on him, but it backfires and makes him vomit slugs. Some of the magic in this world doesn't need words and some of it does. Some of it is like basic English words and the other types are like Latin. So I wonder again if culturally the language barrier makes different types of spells happen, or if you could say eat slugs in a different language and it would have the same effect. Like, could you say like a bunch of shit in Chinese and would it have a different effect than it would in English, for example? In other places in the world, do they use Latin when they cast their spells, or do they use like a more antiquated form of their own language? Hagrid doesn't like Lockhart because he's the only one with a brain here, and says that he was the only man for the job, which I can relate to my earlier rant. They also talk about the mudblood situation. Most wizards these days are half-blood anyways. If we hadn't married muggles, we'd have died off. So the magic thing is a race thing, except when it randomly happens to muggles. Otherwise, it's a race thing. Does it work the other way around, where wizards sometimes have a muggle child? Like, I know that squibs are a thing, which are wizards having a child who is non-magical, but is that the same thing, or is that different? Hagrid also implies that he's using magic from his umbrella wand to make the pumpkins bigger, and no one really cares. Dumbledore knows and certainly doesn't care. Wizarding Ministry has a track on when kids or people who aren't allowed to do magic, but Hagrid is a special case. Ron and Harry go to detention. Ron is supposed to polish trophies and Harry signs fan mail for Lockhart, which also means that there's two different types of punishment, which is not good because two different types of punishment don't make any sense. It looks bad. Like, you're supposed to have them both doing an equivalent thing. Polishing trophies and signing fan mail are not the same thing. One is very labor intensive and the other one is just being tortured by Lockhart existing. So the voices happen, and I guess it only awakened now. I wonder if there's any significance to that. So they talk about winter and Christmas and all that. Nearly headless Nick gets a note saying that he can't join the headless hunt. I actually like a lot about the ghost lore. I like the Death Day party that's coming up. I like all of that stuff. I wish I could see more of it. Harry gets called to Filch's office because Filch is mad that Harry got mud on the floor. Filch is very grumpy today. I guess he's like one of those cops that's just looking for someone to get a speeding ticket to. Peeves then causes some shit, and then Filch just abandons Harry in his office, and then Harry immediately snoops around and starts reading. Quickspell is an all-new, fail-safe, quick results, easy-learn course. Hundreds of witches and wizards have benefited from Quickspell. So is this a scam, or is this actually a real thing? Can someone who can't use magic learn to use magic through brute force? Like, it seems like a race thing, but is it? Filch sees Harry reading this stuff and then just lets him go. Nick had apparently caused the whole ruckus. I guess Nick decided that he wants to rebel against the staff. I would have supposed that he had some sort of, thing with the school, how he shouldn't interfere and help the students get out of trouble, but I guess he just does that anyway. I mean, with a school that has Peeves existing within it, I guess they don't have any rules regarding ghosts. So they show up at the Death Day party and they're walking around, and Hermione sees Moaning Myrtle. "Oh no," said Hermione, stopping abruptly. Turn back, I don't want to talk to Moaning Myrtle." She says that Moaning Myrtle haunts the bathroom and none of the girls want to go and pee with Moaning Myrtle watching, which is insane. You'd think that they would have installed another bathroom somewhere. The crowd howls with laughter, rolling, I swear to fuck. So Harry hears voices again while they're walking their way back from the party after deciding that they needed to go. I wonder if anyone else in the school senses this. Surely Harry is not the only Parselmouth in existence right now. I guess the snake is also communicating telepathically, because in the other example that's coming up with the dueling club thing, the snake audibly has to make noises. It can't just telepathically communicate to him. So I wonder if anyone else can hear it hissing. So they find the cat, and on the wall is written, "The Chamber of Secrets has been opened. Enemies of the air beware." With magic blood, because later on the magic blood doesn't seem to come off no matter how much you clean it. Malfoy is extremely sus the entire time because we need a red herring here. Filch shows up, sees his cat attacked, and blames these children standing in front of him just because. "You," he shrieked, you murdered my cat, you killed her, I'm going to kill you." I don't get how everyone in the school seems to think that a student is capable of doing any of this. Snape loomed behind them, half in shadow, wearing the most peculiar expression. I bet it's a shit-eating grin because it's Snape. And Lockhart decides to interject some parentheses. "He knows I'm a squib. Oh my god, he's a movie effect. Get him." Well, congratulations, Filch. Now you just told everyone you're a squib. Snape also thinks that Harry should be punished for murdering this cat by not playing Quidditch. Completely destroy a cat. You shouldn't be allowed to play sports ball, but other than that, it's okay. Snape is biased as hell. Even McGonagall tells him off, but I guess they just let him do it. After this, Harry asks if he should tell anyone that he was hearing voices, and Ron says no. Want to elaborate on that? Because it sounds like something that he might want to have checked. Shouldn't he at least talk to Dumbledore about it, who probably already knows about it in the first place? Rumor spreads of Harry being the big bad, and the Weasleys start making jokes to make him feel better, but it doesn't really work. I hope he's got time to petrify Filch before getting expelled. "I was only joking," Ron added hastily as Ginny blanched. It's actually a nice bit of foreshadowing there with Ginny reacting to it that way, because you would think she's just scared of the idea, but we know what she's really up to now. Hermione wants a copy of History of Hogwarts to learn about the Chamber of Secrets, but everyone else seems to have checked it out of the library first, so she doesn't know what to do. She asks the history professor later. In the movies it's McGonagall, but we get the same amount of exposition. There was an age where witches and wizards were persecuted. I assume this is either before or after the Salem witch trials, and I have read the Hogwarts A History novella that they have, and I also distinctly remember that witches would make fire harmless and pretend to die, and it would be quirky to them. So I guess they would just leave the actual humans who died to burn to death. So whenever this was happening, they made the school. And the Slytherin started going on his little crusade and built a secret chamber and then left the school. So it's a magic gas chamber. Like I've said it, I said it. We were all thinking it. So the snake can literally murder everyone indiscriminately as long as Tom Riddle controls it. How do the Hogwarts staff search to see something in the school? Do they physically walk around, or do they just cast a spell and see if it pings anything? They said that they searched the school, but it seems like they could have approached the bathroom and just been like, yo, there's something weird here. Or if they were remodeling the school at any time, like let's say one of the bathrooms broke, like the sink broke, if they had pulled the sink back, they would have seen this massive hole. Or would it have been magically disguised somehow so it just would have been flat? Plus, since Dumbledore knows everything and he apparently can see through the invisibility cloak as is confirmed later on, and he seems to just be God, don't you think that him walking around the school and appearing before the bathroom, he would have been like, yo, I see something weird here? Ron really hates Slytherin, to the point where he said that if he had been in Slytherin, he would have just went home and not attended school. So they return to the chamber message where the cat was yeeted. They find scorch marks, which I don't remember if that ever got brought up again. The spiders are all going out of the castle window. They also want to check inside the bathroom because that's where some of the weird shit is too. No one thinks it's weird that a girl died in the toilet, which is right next to the place where the Chamber of Secrets message is. Myrtle is suicidal even as she's dead. She's basically like Dazai, but like shit. Morning Myrtle is so fucking creepy. So Ron thinks Malfoy is the one who's behind it all. I'm still not convinced that Malfoy didn't have a hand in it. Like, we know that they actively did in a way, but I wonder how much Malfoy, the kid, Draco, actually knows. So they find out that Polyjuice Potion is a thing and decide that they want to brew it. It seems very physical, and I wonder how much it actually changes. Like, let's say if someone has a disability, if you change to look like them, are you actually going to adopt that disability? Like, can you not use your legs during that time? Or would you be able to use your legs but you just look like them? Polyjuice stuff seems a bit dodgy to me, said Ron, frowning. What if we stuck looking like them forever? I'm also wondering, why don't they just put the invisibility cloak on, go stand where the Slytherin common room is, wait for one of them to whisper the password, get into the common room that way, and then just watch Malfoy, because the way that Malfoy works, he's probably gloating about it every chance he can get if he's the one who's behind everything. So they could have just listened to him, and then if they needed to, do the Polyjuice Potion thing and come back later. They've proven that they can go through portraits anyway, and they can follow people into portraits and all that using the cloak. So they trick Lockhart into giving them a permission slip for the book by just saying, hey, you're pretty cool, and then he's like, okay, I'll sign whatever you want. The potion book that they have got some metal as fuck shit in there. I really want to see some illustrations of this, which included a man who seemed to have been turned inside out, and a witch spouting several extra arms out of her head. I would have rather read that book instead of this one, honestly. Hermione says that for the potion they need a bit of whoever they're changing into. Ron immediately assumes it's toenails. He probably has a thing about that, and I'm not gonna get into it. Parentheses, please. Also, I wonder if any students, especially Slytherins I guess, who are senior students, have tried any of these, because if these guys can get away with it, think of how many other horrendous crimes have happened in this school from other people. For the Quidditch match, all of the other houses gang up against Slytherin, because no one likes Slytherin. We also see the Bludgers are fucked up and trying to murder a student, but no one seems to think that there's anything wrong with them. Dobby is so powerful that he can change these to hunt down someone and hurt them inside Hogwarts, which is apparently supposed to be resistant against foreign magic. He's like a super being. Harry decides to deal with the rogue one because he's a perfect sports ball man and he can just do everything. And then he breaks his arm and he somehow still catches the snitch and just lands on the ground. Lockhart comes down and tries to help him but fucks it up anyway. Lockhart hadn't mended Harry's bones, he had removed them. So his bones got deleted. I wonder if bones automatically grow in the correct place, because remember, you got a bunch of gunk in your arm. You got some veins, you got some muscles and shit. You got a bunch of stuff in there. How is Harry's arm just not completely fucking dead? They take Harry to the hospital wing and give him some stuff to regrow his bones. Is Skelly Grow commercially available, or is it just something that they give to hospitals? So Dobby shows up, Harry gets mad at him, and Harry Potter shone like a beacon of hope for those of us who thought the dark days would never end, sir. Dobby, please stop. His ego cannot get any bigger. So there is a Chamber of Secrets, Harry whispered, and you say it's been opened before. Tell me, Dobby. Dobby, at this point you might as well just tell him. You're kind of useless, Dobby. Dobby must go, breathed the elf, terrified. There was a loud crack and Harry's fist was suddenly clenched on thin air. So Colin gets brought into the hospital wing afterwards. He has his camera with him, so they take a look at it, and the camera smokes so that any of the evidence he got of his attacker was gone. So Dumbledore says, it means that the Chamber of Secrets has been opened again. Hermione and Ron are in the bathroom with the potion when Harry arrives. Harry started to tell them about Colin, but Hermione interrupted. Is this the safest place? Because Moaning Myrtle is there. Wouldn't she tattle on them and say that they're making a potion here? She seems to like the type who would enjoy that kind of thing. Meanwhile, hidden from the teachers, a roaring trade in talismans, amulets, and other protective devices was sweeping the school. I wonder if these talismans actually work. Malfoy has been staying behind for Christmas, which means that he's ready to murder someone, and they're gonna use the potion for him then. Harry causes a diversion in potions so they can get Snape's ingredients. Snape just glares at Harry, so they think that he knows they're up to something, but Snape doesn't do anything. Behind him walked a Slytherin girl who reminded Harry of a picture he'd seen in Holidays with Hag. So everyone in Slytherin is not only mean and evil, but also really ugly. This is at the dueling club as well, so they also teach the kids Expelliarmus, but the kids cast other things so it goes wrong, and Lockhart, again, shows that he is shit at everything. Justin gets mad at Harry for when the snake thing happens, because he's an idiot. He obviously doesn't see that Harry looks like he's trying to get the snake away from him. Ron says that not a lot of people can talk to snakes because that's some sort of Satan ability or something. I guess that Harry has it because he's part Horcrux, because Voldemort's powers transferred in. But I'm in Gryffindor, Harry thought. The sorting hat wouldn't have put me in there if I had Slytherin blood. For heaven's sake, Harry, said Hermione, exasperated, as one of Ron's bishops wrestled her knight off his horse and dragged them off the board. Go and find Justin if it's so important to you. Hermione says that once Harry starts moping around about the fact that people think that he's like a snake person, murderer, Satan man. Hermione is so flippant about it. Like, the man's kind of upset about the fact that this is happening to him. You couldn't show a bit more sympathy? So Harry goes off to find Justin, and hears this boy loudly talking about Harry as a weirdo. He's just standing there preaching to all of his friends in the Potter is a serial killer club in front of Harry. The school flips their opinion about Harry faster than a pandering Twitch thought goes from side to side. Hagrid is also afraid that something is killing his livestock. He also thinks that it could be a blood-sucking what now? Peeves then makes fun of Harry and everyone just keeps on hating him again. They've got to hate him once per year, I think. McGonagall shows up to take him to Dumbledore when he sees Nick just frozen. He knew where he was being taken. This must be where Dumbledore lived. Wait, does he live here or is this his office? So he finds the sorting hat sitting on the shelf and it talks to him. You've been wondering whether I put you in the right house, the hat said smartly. Yes, you were particularly difficult to place. Adverb usage, please. Is it because Harry himself either could have been a good or bad person, or is it because that Harry is a goody two-shoes and Voldemort's bad part inside of him could have influenced him? That makes the difference between him being in Slytherin or Gryffindor. So Dumbledore's blood explodes and Harry's like, oh my god, fuck my life. Dumbledore asks Harry if there's anything he needs to say, and Harry doesn't want to be a snitch, so he's like, Grove Street. And then Hagrid comes in and says that Harry is innocent. Hagrid, said Dumbledore loudly, I do not think that Harry attacked those people. You already fucking know that. Why don't you just make shit easier and tell everyone what you know? Fred and George keep making fun of Harry for the rumors and Draco looks very mad about it. You'd think that he'd want to put shit under the radar so that no one suspects him, but he's got a lot of pride in people easily knowing what he's up to. So then Christmas time arrives, the Dursleys send some crap to Harry, a toothpick as well, and asked whether or not he could just stay at school. Like, seriously, just ship him off to one of his friends' families. Just be like, yo, you're kicked out of the house, and then he'll be like, what do I do? Molly Weasley will just take him in. And are they not mad at him afterwards? They're just like, oh, I guess we're stuck with him now, so they just get over it. They're like, they are NPC. Hermione shows up and says that she got some cake and they drug Crabbe and Goyle. Immediately, the idiots just eat the cake and then they die. Well, not die, but, you know, basically die. Grinning stupidly, they stuff the cake's hole into their large mouths. I gotta ask, what would happen if you put hair from two people in one potion? His robes ripped at his chest, expanded like a barrel bursting its loops. His feet were in agony and shoes 4 sizes too small. Firstly, if she already gave you the robes, why didn't you put the big robes on first before you transformed? Ron just sees a Ravenclaw girl and asks her where the Slytherin common room is, and then gets surprised when she doesn't know anything about the Slytherin common room. The password to the common room is pure blood. Who makes these passwords? You would have thought that they wouldn't allow that in school. The Slytherin common room was a long, low underground room with rough stone walls and ceiling from which round greenish lamps were hanging on the chain. They're really setting these guys up to be villains, aren't they? Draco confirms what we already know. He hates Dumbledore, he thinks Dumbledore is covering everything up and covering up what happened last time, and he likes his dad, and he hates Harry, and he hates that everyone thinks that Harry is the big bad, and the chamber was opened 50 years ago. So, and he also confirms that he doesn't know who's behind it. They have to run away before the potion reveals who they really are. Hermione has furry shit going on. I'm wondering if her organs are between a cat and a human and if she's not dying right now. Harry and Ron looked under the sink where Myrtle was pointing. A small, thin book lay there, and it had a shabby black cover. So they find the diary. I guess it got pooped back out of the toilet after Ginny tried flushing it and smacked through Myrtle. So if the diary is taken out of the school, does Voldemort not have his magic power to show himself inside the school? Malfoy got the diary back into the school, but I wonder what would have happened if Ginny had just decided not to take that diary with her. Which I think she should have not taken it with her. She should have just opened it and been like, you, what is this? And you'd think that the Arthur Weasley would have been like, don't use anything from the Malfoys, Ginny, it might be cursed. And then he would have taken it and disposed of it somewhere. It's kind of a miracle that the diary even got into the school again. Ron mentions that he cleaned Tom Riddle's school trophy and that's where he recognizes the name on the diary. And they immediately assume that Riddle got his special award for catching the heir of Slytherin 50 years ago. Parentheses. So the mandrakes are apparently changing their emotion, which means they're ready to be murdered soon for the cure. So Valentine's Day happens and these horrifying Cupid things start chasing kids around. Through the doors to the entrance hall marched a dozen surly looking dwarves. Not just any dwarves, however. Lockhart had them all wearing golden wings and carrying harps. So are these guys just like hiring party clowns or something? They look like they want to kill themselves. Harry tries to run away from them, but they catch him and they force him to take the card message that they have. Draco tries stealing the diary and Harry disarms him, and then Percy shows up and acts like Harry is the one who did something wrong. If Percy just would have been a good prefect and actually used his eyes to see what was happening, maybe he wouldn't have been such a bootlicker. After all of this nonsense, Harry decides to take out the diary and write his name into it. He then gets taken into the diary and showed the very warped perspective of Hagrid looking like he's the one who unleashed the bad. Professor Dippet, ashamed that such a thing had happened at Hogwarts, forbade me from telling the truth. So that's why he claims that the truth never got out there. But my question is, do Horcruxes work differently every time? Because this one you write shit in, Harry is Harry, the one in the 7th book makes you see hallucinations, then there's like the other one that I can't remember what it does. The snake is the snake. So, and also, do Horcruxes all have this type of power where they can take someone into like the flashback dimension, or is it based on how powerful they are? I would have thought that the magic from the Horcrux would have been dulled somewhat because of the charms around the school to prevent evil people from getting in. Harry tries calling out to people in the flashback, like, "I'm sorry I disturbed you, I'll go now," he half shouted. Like, Harry, let it go. You can see that they don't hear you. Also, does this work in the same way that it's called a pensive in book 4, which shows you memories? I like to call it the memory sync. I wonder if it works the same way. They also reveal that Tom decided to fuck up the school because he didn't like the fact that he had to go home. He wanted to stay at Hogwarts because he lived in an abusive situation. A gleam of many eyes and a pair of razor-sharp pincers. So that's what Hagrid was hiding. It makes sense that they might have thought spider venom was involved, but it's weird Dumbledore knew so much that he knew Hagrid wasn't involved, so he let him stay at the school even though he got expelled, yet he didn't really stop any of this. Like, he didn't try and stop the expulsion at all. So after this, Harry immediately believes that Hagrid is at fault, even though he shouldn't trust Riddle and Hagrid is his friend. So he decides to talk to Ron about how evil Hagrid is. And Ron is also in the same vein here, saying that Hagrid was in Nocturne Alley and is therefore suspicious, and then Harry tries defending him even though Harry's the one who threw him under the bus. Do you really think that Hagrid is the type of guy to do that? The voices come back and Hermione rushes off to the library without telling them anything about her hypothesis. Now, this is something that I don't get in movies, especially when the person just runs off before they can tell anyone what they're working on, and then they die or get taken before they can actually tell anyone. Because if it were me, I would have been like, hey, I know this dangerous thing is happening right now. This is my hypothesis, so if I go missing or something, you know where to start working from. I'm not just going to leave you in the dark like that. But nevertheless, she does rush off, so the Quidditch match gets cancelled and McGonagall tells Harry that Hermione got attacked. She was holding a small circular mirror, so she did know that something might have attacked her if she wasn't careful, yet she didn't tell them or leave any notes for them or anything. Isn't it obvious all the stuff's coming from Slytherin? The heir of Slytherin, the monster of Slytherin. Why don't we just chuck all the Slytherins out? Because it's Hogwarts, Ron. It's Hogwarts. So Harry gets his invisibility cloak out, which he failed to use beforehand when it would have been much more productive to do so. All of the stuff with the awkward conversation happens. "Look, Albus," said Fudge uncomfortably. "Hagrid's record against him. The Ministry's got to do something. The school governors have been in touch. Why wouldn't they have taken Hagrid to jail in the first place if they had believed that he was the one who attacked people when this happened before? I get that the previous principal was trying to cover everything up, but couldn't they have been like, Hagrid did something else, so we gotta arrest him and then locked him in Azkaban or something? Why did they just expel him and release him into the world when he could have probably killed more people? Hagrid's line is just so fucking awkward, it doesn't get any better in the book. "I will only truly have left this school when none here are loyal to me." I guess in the 6th book you left. They also find out that there's no more spiders around because they've all left to go into the forest. So they don't know where to follow the spiders after all. The teachers are also going around chaperoning students between classes because the students aren't even allowed to roam the school anymore because of all of the murder happening. So they finally managed to go and find some spiders, and they said that Ron hadn't been to the Forbidden Forest before when he went to the Forbidden Forest as part of detention from the last book, right? Am I in a parallel dimension? Did that not happen? The dog in the hut goes nuts, so I'm assuming that no one's feeding him. He's just hanging out there. So after they interact with the spider, and the spider is like, "Go away. Oh no, don't go away, I'm gonna eat you." Harry and Ron run. And then the sentient car, by the way, the dog car, shows up and just... does it need petrol or anything? How does it exist? Oh, I'm sorry, gasoline, yes, America. So Aragog had basically been released into the forest, so none of the ministry had decided to go and track Aragog down at all. They were just like, nah, he's probably dead in there, and they just left him there. I, said Aragog, clicking angrily, I was not born in the castle. I came from a distant land. A traveller gave me to Hagrid when I was an egg. So even when Hagrid was a child, he was still dealing with black market. They also concluded from this whole conversation that Hagrid is innocent after all, even though the stupid magic ghost was clearly lying to them about something. They were just not using their brains at all. There was a loud bang behind Harry as Neville Longbottom's wand slipped, vanishing one of the legs on his desk. Is magic that volatile? Like, you would have sworn someone would have died in the school by now from that. Harry notices the paper in Hermione's hand when they go to visit her and takes it. She wrote on it, but it was from the library. Did she just steal the page from a library book? That's a bit strange. Again, if she just fucking told them beforehand, then this wouldn't have been a problem. The crowing of a rooster is fatal to it. It's so obscure. I love it. It's stupid as hell. So they go and confront Lockhart because they're like, he must have a way to get rid of it. He knows everything. And then Lockhart's packing his shit, and then he's like, my books wouldn't have sold half as well if people didn't think I'd done those things. No one wants to read about some ugly old Armenian warlock, even if he did save the village from werewolves. Then I had to put a memory charm on them so that they wouldn't remember doing it. There's one thing I pride myself in, it's memory charms. Just go on and confess your whole life story, Kira. Do your monologuing. Tell me how old you are and how you want to live a quiet life. So they talk to Myrtle, and Myrtle points out that the sink has some fucky shit going on, so they think that it's an opening to the pipes in the school. Harry speaks parcel tongue and tells the sink to open. Remember, said Harry quietly as they walked cautiously forward, any sign of movement, close your eyes right away. What a terrible sentence. It's so clunky. Harry said quietly as they walked cautiously forward. Why wouldn't you describe the way that they were walking beforehand and then just say that Harry whispered or something? Bad sentence. That's like one of the worst sentences in the entire book. It has everything but the parentheses, and it would have been like gigabad. So Lockhart tries to cast the spell on them, and then he gets brain damage because it backfired because Ron's wand is beyond repair. So then Harry goes to the chamber, sees Tom Riddle there and Ginny just hanging out on the floor. Harry stares at Tom and goes, there was something very funny going on here. Doesn't miss a beat, does he? I've always been able to charm the people I needed, said Tom. Thanks, Kira, thanks. Riddle laughed his high laugh again. Okay, that's the second worst sentence in the entire book. So this Riddle is like young Voldemort as a ghost. So does he made the Horcrux before he left school, so he knows that he's becoming Voldemort, but how does he know that he was successful in doing the things that he wanted to do? Like, do the Horcruxes automatically know everything that Voldemort in the current day knows, or do they just assume that all of their plans went well? Tom Riddle knows that he couldn't kill Harry. Like, it seems like he knows it like someone told him and he doesn't know it from memory. I'm confused, man. I decided to leave behind a diary, preserving my 16-year-old self in its pages. So he writes his name out in the air. It's so lame. This is such a lame way to reveal your name. Dude, this is not intimidating at all. You're basically just playing Scrabble. The Phoenix shows up. Did Dumbledore automatically know to send the Phoenix after Harry if Harry went into the chamber? Like, how did the Phoenix just show up like that? And if the Phoenix knows how to get down there, which it clearly does, why couldn't it lead Dumbledore down there? I don't get this at all. I do like that it sings like mysterious music. It's actually a really cool description for a phoenix to do instead of like the shitty squawk that it does in the movie. Tom also confirms that Dumbledore sent the phoenix, so like how? There's a strange likeness between us after all. We're not so different, you and I. So after the snake's eyes get taken out, Harry looks at its face, and then a silver sword appeared inside the hat. I will save my questions later for the lore of the sword, because especially in the 7th book there's a whole lot of discussion about its origin. The bird also has a healing ability. Riddle just happens to forget about that. He is bootleg Kira. He just is. Like, he just needs the hand fetish and to get run over by an ambulance. So the bird also knew that Harry needed to stab the Horcrux, so the bird has a high level of intelligence that it seems like it would have helped Harry sooner. And then Ginny just stopped dying when the snake died. So on the way back, they find Lockhart again with Ron. Lockhart seems to be a good guy now because his memory is destroyed. The thing that I have with memory erasure as well is, I guess there's a bit of a technical thing, maybe even a nitpick, but I gotta mention, what type of memory erasure is this? Because in some instances when you're actually casting the spell, you can be like, okay, so I want you to forget who you are, and I want you to forget what you did. But if the spell backfires from a damaged wand, wouldn't Lockhart like forget how to eat or speak or anything? Like, wouldn't he have to learn everything? How does him forgetting stuff just stop at his memory? Why doesn't it stop at his motor skills and all of the stuff? Because we don't just automatically know how to do this stuff. We have to be taught to do a lot of this stuff when we're a child, which is why when a child grows up in the wilderness, they don't have the opportunity to do that stuff. There's more parentheses. I'm just so dead towards parentheses now. Harry, however, was looking past them. Professor Dumbledore was standing by the mantelpiece, beaming. So, the fuck is he doing here? Harry and friends get back to the castle. They show up at Dumbledore's office, and Dumbledore's just like, yo, I'm back. And Malfoy is surprised that Dumbledore's back too. Did Dumbledore just be like, my time has come. I see the child has done my dirty work and defeated Magic Hitler a second time. You must have shown me real loyalty down in the chamber. Nothing but that would have caused Fawkes to you. So, this GPS machine bird is like basically suck Dumbledore's dick to the enemy. The bird GPS is gonna find you and help you. But if you don't like Dumbledore, if you disagree with his methods, but you're still a good person, you can just die. Because Dumbledore don't care. He also confirms that Harry's scar gave him evil powers. Only a true Gryffindor could have pulled that out of the hat, Harry, regarding the sword, which makes no sense. What does this mean? So Dumbledore said that the governors Malfoy had pressured to make Dumbledore leave, all immediately relented, I guess. Malfoy could have been suspended for blackmail, but I guess that's not happening. Then Malfoy shows up and they have a stupid conversation, and then Harry hands Malfoy the diary, and then Malfoy hands it to Dobby, and then Dobby is like, oh my god, I got a sock, and I don't know how the spell works, but Dobby is free now. So Dobby talks about how he had tried to give Harry clues, and once again Dobby is useless, and then Harry teaches Ron what a phone is. There's 2 parentheses on the same page. That is peak parentheses. I am going to jihad parentheses, inshallah. So I remember why I read this book the least. Well, not the least. The 5th one I read the least because of the angst, but I read this one the least after the 5th one. The 5th one is like, I think, my least favorite in the series. Then the 2nd one is my 2nd least favorite in the series. I would have liked the 3rd one a lot more had it not been for the really big fuck up of the time travel element, but I like all of the other stuff about it. I like the 4th one quite a lot. I don't know why, just I do. The 6th one is kind of weird, but I kind of like it because it's like moody, but it's not as angsty. And the 7th one is just confusing. I think the first one is kind of like the first JoJo part. Like, it's a bit bland in a way, but without it, you wouldn't have gotten the rest. So you better be grateful. Anyway, we have the Discord server up and running, and sorry this took a while, just, you know, stuff. I have a secret project underway, and I'll only tell you about it later on, because it's not ready yet, but I think you'll like it. If you made it this far into the video, then you'll know about it.